Hosted by Mike, the Big Cheese. Like that, all the
right, welcome back to the Heavy Metal Mayhem Radio Show. It is Sunday, March 12th. We're already halfway through the month and going into my second week of full retirement. Maybe this week will actually feel like retirement. Last week just felt like I was on vacation. I was going to have to go back to work this week, but that's not going to happen ever again. All right, right there, Cro-Mags with Death Camps off the Best Wishes record, the band's second album. Harley Flanagan took over on vocals. Him and John James had a a lot of bad blood between them over the years, and he was out of the band by that time. But great record, but it cannot compare to the Age of Quarrel, the debut record. And they were actually one of the first hardcore bands I saw. It had to be 83 or 84. I saw them at the Ritz, and they were just great. They just blew me off the stage. I couldn't believe it. What a great band they were. And, I was in a band called Stillborn in the 80s, another hardcore band, and the Cro-Mags were one of the bands I was dying to play with, and we never got a chance to play with them. By the time we started getting out there and playing live around 85, the Cro-Mags were already in turmoil. And like I said, they didn't play as often as they should have back then because most of the band members just didn't get along with each other. But they were a solid act. Definitely one of the granddaddies of the New York hardcore scene, along with the Agnostic Front and the Crumbsuckers, who came along a little later, but still a great band on top of that. All right, well, listen, we got a great show for everybody tonight. Joe Cerna from Black Virgin, Steve Bashford from Tynator. We're going to talk to Joe first and Steve in the second half of the show. We're going to keep the music going between now and then. Because we've had a couple of live guests on each week, we've been lacking in the music department because the interviews have been taking up most of the show. But we'll try to get on what we can tonight. We got to start with some sad news. Jimmy Durkin from Dark Angel passed away this week. He's been fighting cancer for quite a while now, and the family kind of kept it low-key and under the radar. So a lot of people have been asking over the years, when's that Dark Angel record coming out? Now you kind of know why. Jimmy was a great guy. I had him on the show many years ago with, I think he was playing a Ruthless at the time. He did a stint in Ruthless, and they all came on for one show, and that's when I had Jimmy on here. But, he was a founding member from Dark Angel going back to 83. Pagan War Machine and Dreams of Damnation with Steve Gaines. He had those two bands going on. He also played with Tyrex for a short amount of time, Tank, Violent Omen, Witchery, you name it. Jimmy was a great guitar player and a good guy. It's a shame what happened, but cancer gets to you sometime and that's it. But let's do a little Dark Angel. We have arrived. Out of Chicago, Snow White, Something for Nothing with Nicole Lee on vocals, otherwise known as Sue Sharp. I spent years looking for her to have on the show. I could just never find her. And then one day I reached out to Greg Fulton, Ian Tafoya, for the people that go by the stage name. Greg was a guitar player and the main guy in Snow White. Even he hadn't heard from her in a long time, so I had Greg on the show. He has this band called Sweet Diesel Jenkins going on today. It's like an R&B party type band. Greg's just an amazing guitar player, absolutely from top to bottom. And right before that, Gravestone. Haven't played them on the show in a long time with The Hour. All right, let's do our demolition segment, get this out of the way, then we'll get Joe on the phone. We'll talk to him all about Black Virgin. First up, how about we do a song off the Punches Profit demo? This was another one of John Cyrus's bands. After Age of Steel, I think he had like 10 different bands he was playing in at one time or another. None of them really ever went anywhere outside of the demo stage. This one was from 88 or 89, I believe. It was the Rights of Hatred demo. And he went by the name Father Damien during this time period of his celestial journey through life. But it wasn't bad stuff. John was a great singer. He's just kind of out there. But here you go. Rights of Hatred.
Away from ladders of eternity, we vomit forth upon the golden rule. It repenteth me not that my summons torments and destroys. The festering fragments of the name I give that does aside. Is the rotting stone of the commandments. Black magician blasts forth the sting of his bitterness. The gates of hell are open, spitting forth the hatred. Riding high on hot, blasting winds of hell. Crush the lifeline of the enemy. Vengeance vomits forth needles of pain. The rise of hatred commanded in the dark. To candles, consuming parchments through the ether. Upon a hillside, a curse was placed to seal forever. In the darkness, the eyes of hatred work their power. The binding, deflected back to pendant laws of holy lies that try to bind us from our pleasures.
right, some of New Jersey's finest right there, Insaniac. CJ, who played guitar in that band, also plays in Blood Feast today, another great New Jersey band who's going to have a new record coming out real soon. That's off their 87 demo, Psychomania. The band put out about 6 or 7 demos, I think, from 85 to 90. Nothing else ever came out of the band after that. And I think it was in 2013 or 14 that somebody put out a compilation album of most of those demos called Terminal Madness. I don't know who did it, but it's definitely in the need of a reissue by somebody. They were just a solid band from back in the day. All right. We're going to have to get to Joe in about 2 minutes. I want to play Black Virgin song before then. But as John mentioned in the chat room, Paul Quinn of Saxon is retiring from touring. He's still going to record with the band, I guess, when he can, but he's had enough. And I can't blame him. I mean, the man's in his 70s, his early 70s. Like most of the guys in Saxon are in their 70s, the original members anyway. We're all getting older now, and we all wish we could do the things we did when we were 20 or 30, but it gets hard, That 1 hour on stage, that's the easy part of being in a band. It's the traveling, the getting from place to place, the press, and everything else you got to deal with. It's just hard, and it really takes a toll on your body when you're younger. Never mind when you're in your 70s. So we should still have Paul probably on the next new Saxon record, but I don't see him doing more after that. Sort of like a Glenn Tipton thing, even though Glenn has, a medical condition and he's sick. He still gets up there here and there to play, and that's what we'll probably get with Paul. Probably locally, when they're playing in England. I doubt they'll fly him over to play 2 or 3 songs live here in the U.S., but I'm lucky enough to have seen those guys back in the early 80s, the mid-80s, the 90s, 2000, at least once a decade, so I'm happy about that. All right, well, we'll get to some news later on, but right now, let's do some Black Virgin, and then I'll get Joe on the line. I have to apologize for last week with Frank Aresti from Demon Axe and Fate's Warning. After the show was over, Jeremy from Heaven Hell Records called me and goes, Mike, I'm so sorry. I gave you the wrong number. I grabbed my wife's phone. I saw Frank in there. I gave you the number. It was the wrong person, the wrong number. So we'll have Frank back on the show, I think the first Sunday in April, and we'll do it again. And this time I'll make sure we get the right number ahead of time. I'll reach out to Frank before the show to confirm it. All right, let's do some Black Virgin, most likely to exceed.
No sense fighting in this life.
right, let's get Joe on the phone. Hopefully we'll have it working this week. We had no luck last week, right? Here we go.
Hello.
Joe, this is Mike for our interview. You're on the air live. How are you, man?
How are you, Mike? Good to hear you.
Oh, I'm doing great, man. I have to tell you, such a big fan of Black Virgin going back to almost the very beginning. And, man, what's some great stuff over there you guys did.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, it was a blast. Yep.
Oh, man, they were good times, especially here in New York back in the 80s. And, but it's funny because there's so little info about Black Virgin out there. It's almost like you guys were forgotten by the mass metal media, but you guys really had an impact on the scene.
Yeah, we didn't. We were big more in Europe than the States. We only played a handful of places in the States. One place was, maybe Lemore's. The Underground was a small place on Broadway, and I think 3rd Street, and we hung out there. Did a show every Friday, Saturday, and we just didn't do a lot here in the States too much. We went to Europe. I joined them, and 6 months later, I was recording to Germany to record an album, and then we followed up with a tour. 3 more tours after that, going back there. And then we would come back to the States and just, play at our local home walls down in the Lower East Side.
That's true, but it was kind of like that for a lot of bands back then. I don't know why. They always seem to, the European bands always wanted to come to here, to the U.S. to break big here. And our own bands had a hard time doing it on their own here.
Yeah. We got, I got very lucky. It was my first band, and it was only with them for 6 months, and barely knew how to play the bass. And then we're going over to Europe to do this. We got over so well over there, so we just kept going back.
Yeah.
We had some great connections there. Kenny, he had his cousin there who was in the scene a little bit, and we hooked up with some other people, and it was just nonstop. As soon as we got there for a couple of weeks at a time, we were just on the road, going to the next place, to the next place, to the next place, and just staying in a little, bed and breakfast and hotels and partying the whole time back then. It was just a blast.
Yeah, it was. And I caught you guys at Lemore's when you played over there, being a Brooklyn guy myself, seeing you when you're in the neighborhood. And, I think, the band was really around from the very early 80s, I want to say, about 4 or 5 years before you joined up with them.
Yeah, 79, I believe, is
wow.
When they started with Jimmy Strain on bass. There were a couple of other guys, Sean Vasquez and Rob Graham, that played bass before I joined, I believe. Very short stints with them, obviously. But, yeah, 79, 80, I joined them in 84. Yeah, yep. So it was crazy. It was like, I'm never going to join this band. I just, let me go on an audition, check these guys out. Didn't know the name of them, and I'm like, okay, you're hired. So what's the name of the band? Black Virgin. Oh, great. Mother's going to love that. But it was all cool. It was great.
Yeah.
And so we had a blast. Yeah, they were great. Yeah, they're great to work with.
Yeah, and like you said, Kenny had that band going like from 79, 80. I mean, he had this band doing this music before there really was even a scene. I mean, a lot of people don't even say the scene started like around 81, 82 when Metallica first came out. But you guys were doing it back then. And most people say, the band came around in 86 with the first record and everything. But it did go on years before then. And that first record does come out now. And to me, I thought it was a phenomenal record, most likely to succeed. And how did you feel about the record when it came out? How hard was it to get a record deal at that time, being that you had such trouble here in the U.S., like, going anywhere with anything?
Yeah, exactly. So we go there and we hook up with this producer guy, Ingo Nowotny, and we were in the studio with him, it seemed like 24/7. And for that first, for those 2 weeks when we first went there after I joined, we were in the studio for that, just all day, all night, pounding away. And a very cold studio. It was like an empty warehouse. It was very cold during the winter. And but me and Kathy had gotten cold, and it kind of sucked in that regard. But once we got into the studio, had a couple of beers and whatever, and we got going. It was great. Kenny knowing having a cousin in Germany certainly helped because he directed us in certain ways to hook up with Ego and make that all come together. And it just worked. And it only sold over there in Europe, as far as I know. So and they sold out quick. We only made a certain amount, and we'd have to renew the contract to keep producing more. So it was kind of rough at first because we didn't know what to expect, and we weren't used to just jamming off the cuff like that with on short notice and tightening everything down. So you hear it. It's very there's some areas where I can pick it out and oh my gosh, I think that there. Oh, we should have done this or that or whatever. But it worked. It worked very well in the end. So we just kept trying to distribute as much as we could. Just sell it, give it away, anything. Get the word out there, right?
Yeah.
We weren't playing that much in the States, so we were just trying to do as much as we can to promote ourselves. And all three of us had jobs, of course, 9-to-5 jobs, so it was kind of rough, getting the word out. And we didn't have the internet back then, so we'd have to hit the pavement and plaster all the phone poles.
That's
down
right.
The Lower East Side and uptown and the Bronx, whatever. Yeah. It was fun, though. It was fun.
It was
really fun.
And, I always say, like, every time I have a guest on the show, we talk about, like, how things were done back then and compared today with the internet. Even though, you had, like you said, you had to go around posting your flyers on telephone poles and on buildings to get in. And, just tell people, I'm in a band, I'm playing tomorrow night, come see my show. But it seems like it worked better back then that way because people actually showed up when you could get them there.
It did. That was true with the social media,
Yeah.
Actually, you're interacting with people, and sometimes it would be 3 or 4 bands on the same street, all out there handing flyers, handing each other flyers, It's like, it was great because then you can meet new fans and just get around and just meet people, in a non-aggressive way, and say, come out, check out music, like to bang your head, come on down, this is where we're at. And, God, it was such a weekly thing with groups back then.
It was. It really was. And, you think about the band, a 3-piece band weren't common back in the day. You had Motorhead and a few other bands doing Exciter, but not a common.
Absolutely.
And then you have Kathy on drums. Women in bands back then, metal bands,
Right.
It was kind of a rare thing. And when they won, they were usually the singer. And it was kind of softer. But she was a powerhouse of a drummer.
Yeah, she definitely held her own, guys, for sure. For what we did for the punk metal type stuff, she definitely held her own, And me and Kenny would write riffs there. He'd do the lyric part of everything because he had I think a degree in journalism, so he was really good with words and stuff like that. And I'd help him write the music and the arrangement, and then Kathy was always there like a class. You want me to do this? I'll do this, she says. She wasn't too much in the writing aspect. She was throwing what her ideas and things like that, and they always fit. And so, yeah, she was really good for bringing up the rear that way and holding that rhythm down. Yeah, so you didn't see too many female drummers back then. Nope.
No, you didn't. And she was solid. You just talked about, the punk metal part of it. And the band definitely came out of the punk scene of the late 70s because there really wasn't very little of a metal scene back then. But by the time the record came out, it was definitely much more metal sounding. Was that part of you being in the band, a part of your influence? Or was just, where the band was going musically at the time?
Yeah, I think it was going musically at that time. I might have added that little metal influence on some of the later recordings that we did in writing and stuff, maybe a couple of our demos, or we did. Let me see here. Not here on the top of my head. Let's Hear for Justice and Little Sex for the Boys, and it's more writing on that. And some stuff that we're working on later on. But yeah, I joined up with them, and I was just following them, and didn't know. I was more into. They were listening to like Motorhead and the Ramones and those punk bands of that era, and I was more into Priest and Maiden and Sabbath and even Zeppelin and stuff, and I just kind of mixed that in to make it work. You know,
It did.
um, it worked somehow.
Yeah, I always say Black Virgin were one of those bands that I think were one of the few bands that come out that did something different than a lot of other people doing at the time, and maybe
Yeah,
that's what why there was so many progress. People just couldn't get it, like get what you guys were doing, but it
yeah,
was definitely different.
yeah. We tried to do like heavy but anthemy type songs, sort of like just power chords a lot, and just talking about life in the city and how rough it is, and what usual bands, a lot of bands talk about, they're struggling in the city and stuff, and heartaches that everyone has to deal with, and just political, social issues and stuff, and yeah, and it worked, and that's great. Kenny always was a great lyricist and threw in these play on words a lot of times, like oral sex for the blind, it's like, come on. It was so brilliant. Yeah, he had us in stitches so many nights.
Absolutely. Well, most likely Take Seed comes out in '86. Like you said, it went well over in Europe, but you still were struggling here in the U.S. Now you go back
Mhm.
to demos, and I think there were like maybe 4 or 5 demo tapes you guys that I know about that you guys recorded after that
Yeah.
record came out. Was there ever any offer for another album at the time, or was there something in the can that just never got released?
There were some things that didn't get released as far as songs, particular songs. Let me see here. Yeah, some of the demos were a mixture of Jimmy Strain, their first bassist playing, and then we would redo them, and I would play them. But some of them were actually the same songs that were released on Most Likely to Exceed, and Oral Sex for the Blind, and Sledgehammer Justice, which was really a demo in itself. It was more or less a rough mix, and it was, I don't know, they usually enhanced it and released it as a final on LP recently. From what is these guys, this record label. You got me.
It
It's been a
happens.
while. Yeah.
Was
It's
Metal or Die?
um, released it and it came out there several years ago, and they released it as a full length EP. So it's available on CD and vinyl. There's Omnium Music Group. They're out of Brooklyn. Was the label?
Oh,
And
WYNY or something. WYN Yellow.
yes,
Yeah, I know you're
yes,
talking
thank
about.
you.
Okay, yeah,
WYLN, right?
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, that's it.
I
And
remember that now.
hmm yeah, so there was that, and a lot of the demos are just rehashed from rehearsals, basically, and then we would just remix them down. And there's a lot of there's a few bootleg things out there from guys that just put out everything all in one thing. So those I don't even think about. This is just worry about the ones that we actually produced here.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
you know, most likely to exceed was we wanted to do more. Kenny had written some stuff after that, but I wasn't playing bass on it, and Kathy wasn't playing drums. He wrote some ideas, and we just never got together and did anything with it. Um, yeah, and so that's that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when did the band like officially break up? I mean, because the name was always out there, but like I said, people don't know what went on with the band. Like there was no internet, no magazines were writing about anybody back then. When did it
Mm-hmm.
officially end for you guys? Like where Black Virgin just didn't exist anymore.
About I think 94, 93.
Wow.
I left them in 91, and I think they went back to Germany to do a follow up kind of tour with Rob Graham, I believe, from Primal Scream. Um, that's as much as I know about that.
Yeah, yeah.
After I left them, I went to do other stuff. And yeah, but they went on one more tour, and Kenny made a couple of like rough mix demos, just ideas, basically just vocals, bass and drums, and it just sounded very thin and just unfinished, and it sounded good though. But yeah, that was that. After I left, that was pretty much. They did that one last tour, and that was it. They didn't release anything else after that.
Yeah, that's probably because you left the band. That's why. You can't go on without you on bass. I mean, I'm a bass player myself, so to me, the bass player is always the most important part of a band. But I don't care what anybody says.
It's what everyone can feel, right?
That's right.
That low end, yeah.
But, Joe, was Black Virgin the first real band you played in, or was there something you had out before then that you were involved in that maybe had any recordings?
That was it. You know, I come out from, well, I lived in Ohio. I was born and raised there, and I went out to California for a couple of years, and I hated it. And then we came back, and within a year, when I came back in the winter of '83, within that year, I was out looking for bands to join because I didn't know how to play. I didn't even have a bass when I first got to New York. I looked at, Manny's or Sam Nash or something, about the cheapest thing I could find. And then just went on auditions, and they were like one of the first auditions I went on in 38th and 8th Avenue at the music building, and it was just an incredible experience. Because I said, how many kids out there? I want to be a rock star. I want to be a rock star. I want to be on stage. Blah blah, and that was me. And I got there and auditioned for them, and yeah, you're hired. And here I am, fresh in California in Midtown Manhattan. Really loud. The music building is, it's just every floor. It's got 5 rehearsal rooms on each floor.
Yeah.
And every one of those things were going, and that building was loud. So when I went up there, I was like, "You're hired." And I was like, "Whoa, really?" I couldn't believe it. And didn't even know how to play the damn instrument, just basic,
Yeah.
A, B, C,
That's all you need to know.
Yep, that's it.
As long as you know the E chord, that's it. You're done. You're finished.
That's it. Yeah.
But they were great times like that. All those places, Manny's is gone. Sam Nash is there. It's they're all gone now. They were like the place that every musician went to. Yeah.
Yeah, that hurts. Yeah, when I worked right in that neighborhood, the Garment District for many years, and on lunch I would go down there and window shop and wish I had this and that, and had some things done to some of my gear there, and when it was gone, it was that like my heart sunk.
I know.
Yeah.
It's like that with all the shops. Here in Brooklyn, we had Mama and Papa's and Maggio's. They were like the 2 main stores to go to, and all gone now. I mean, they're just distant memories. But when you're a kid and you're looking for that cheap guitar, that cheap bass, you're going to buy something used, and you can't do that no more. It's a different world we live in.
I know. Yeah.
It's sad. But after you're done with Black Virgin, did you continue with music, or did you just kind of put it away for good after that?
Yeah, no, I went on and I did a couple things for, some alternative bands and some bluesy hard rock bands. One band called Swivet that I really liked with a female on vocals, and it was kind of like PJ Harvey meets Hole meets Tool. So,
okay.
Yeah, it really had a cool vibe. But then, I got married and domestic life took over, and I moved out of Manhattan, and that was it.
That's a life story for all of us, I think.
Yep. Got married and wanted a house, and Manhattan just got too small for me after that.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah. I get that.
Yeah.
But all these years later now, people still talk about the band. People still remember the band. Actually, I got to get you after the show because a record label that I know is really interested in releasing a lot of that Black Virgin stuff. So maybe I'll put you in touch with them, and you could get all the people together and see if you can make it work out, because he does beautiful work and do a great package. But all these years later, now metal coming back so big over the last 10, 15 years, after it died out in the 90s, was there ever any talk between you guys about maybe putting it back together again for one-offs or festivals?
I know. For me, I personally, I would love to. because I get to, I'm probably 60 this year. I was like, that one last hurrah would be awesome,
Yeah.
right? And so yeah, and I talk to Kathy probably a couple times a year, and I think she's not doing anything as far as in a band, but I think she's teaching drums, so she's still playing, and I'm still playing. I got the bass here all the time. I'm always picking the thing up, and but not in a band or anything. Just always constantly, playing and keeping my chops up, and
Yeah.
listening to what's out there. And but like I said, after I left Black Virgin, I did a few other things, very short stints, maybe a year and a half with each, and then moved out to Pennsylvania. Now out here, there's nothing as far as metal. I'm doing blues and even did some jazz, and some oldies and country, and that's it.
Yeah.
So. But I met a lot of good people out here. There's a lot of musicians up here, just not metal guys.
I hate. You know what? As we get older, we all get interested in other stuff too, and just to play. You want to play everything, especially different styles of music and experiment. So as long as you can get out there and do that, it's great. But I know there's probably thousands of people that would love to see Black Virgin live, especially over those European festivals. They fly you over for the weekend, they pay for everything, and you have a good time and you go home.
Yes, I would do it. I'm ready. I would do it. Yeah, it was a blast over there. It really was. Playing. We had one festival where it was just outside in the middle of the summer. It was so hot, and you were on the mountainside in this big field in Germany somewhere, and I forget who we even played with. But that was a great experience. We were right there. We were with the fans. The stage was very low, and the people were right up to the stage. And, you got to hang out and party with them afterwards, and we even slept there the whole night in this big wooden shack with all of our gear, and all the fans are hanging out. And it was just a great thing. And there's so many other places that, little bars that, man, it's like, where is this place? And it looked like it was an old factory, abandoned factory. And you go inside, and there's a stage and lights and, paint peeling off the walls, and, like 500 people packed in. I was like, wow. This is incredible.
It's like a different
And,
world.
I would love to do it again.
And you know what? You go back to Germany today, there's nothing changed. They're still walking around in denim and leather with the long hair, and they live like it's still the 80s, like in these metal areas. Nothing has changed in 40 years. They still live it and breathe it. It's amazing.
Yes, they're good. The fans over there are really devoted. That's one thing. They were really devoted and really cordial and nice. They loved it. The fact that we were from the States, and I don't know if you remember the band. They were called Faithful Breath. They were they dressed up like Vikings and stuff, and they changed their name to Risk later. But we had them come to the States, and they stayed at Kenny's apartment and stuff, and one night we were there in Germany. I think one of the first or second time we were there, and the band Halloween was playing, and their opening act didn't make it, and we got a chance to open for them. So that was really cool, really cool. And it wasn't billed as Black Virgin Halloween. We just got thrown in there like that. Like, come on, guys, you're up. And we did 8 songs, and the crowd got over, and we got over on the crowd. They loved it. And sure, in between, songs, they were yelling Halloween, Halloween. And but they were digging our stuff, and it was great to be exposed to that, to that crowd, and to meet Halloween and things like that, and just kind of get our foot in the door. And I know if we would have stayed, I was like, Kenny, we should just freaking stay here, because if we stay here, we're gonna get a lot bigger. And I was like, oh, we can't. We gotta go back to our jobs, blah blah, Yeah. I can't hear you, Mike. Did I lose you? I guess I lost you.
Can you hear me, Joe?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, yeah, we got a little disconnected there. But I was saying, when you're in a band, it's not easy because you have to work to make money to just to survive. But yeah, you kind of have to be available 24/7 because you never know when something's going to pop up that you got to jump into. And it's how do you do that when you're working a job and tell your boss, I got to leave for 3 weeks or a month? How do you choose? It's a hard thing to do. It really is.
Yeah. It's good to have a partner who has a good job, and thankfully, my girlfriend is now my wife. Had a great job, so I could have take 2 or 3 weeks off. And most people ain't got that,
Yeah.
to be able to do that. So they have to do it in advance. And so we would always go for 2 weeks at a time, 3 weeks maybe, and we did that for four times with me and the group. That is, they went after I left, but it was a lot of fun, and we got my foot in the door, like how a real tour kind of, what it would be like. I mean, I'm not saying that it was a huge thing like, say, with a bunch of tour bands and all that and going on for months at a time, but it was hectic. It was one day after another, traveling from one day, eating when you can, sleeping when you can, and getting in a little bit of rehearsals for gigs or recordings in there. So,
yeah, especially being in another country too. On top of that, you're in a strange world.
Yeah. So Kathy, she was the best. She had this little speech thing, so she could help her speak German. So when we went out shopping, she had her little book, and we'd go around, and it worked because a lot of people too spoke English. So, and we always had Kenny's cousin there with us, and he spoke English. So we always had a tour guide. That's good to have. Absolutely.
Yeah, Jody, you remember like the worst show you ever played? I mean, we went there, it was just like nightmare from start to finish. I'm sure there's probably a few of them.
Yeah, it was. Let me see. The only place I can really think of is one place cut the power out. It said we were too loud. That was down on the Lower East Side. Apparently, we were supposed to open for. This is what I was told. We were supposed to open for Typo Negative. Back then, it might have been just Pete Steele or something. But
yeah.
I forget this place. It was down on like Alphabet City or downstairs, and they just, oh, you're too loud. We have something like some crazy 5:30 slot. And so businesses were still open, and they basically just cut the power off after like, I don't know, 5 songs, and that was probably the worst.
That was probably the A7 Club.
Yeah, it was downstairs. I don't know. It was right on the main.
Yeah, Avenue Way. Avenue A 7th Street. That was the A7 Club. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and it was downstairs. And I think it was 2 staircases that went down to the central door, and the stage was all the way in the back, and it's kind of a narrow room, high stage. I forget. It was a long time ago. I remember there was a big picture window when we came out of it, because I was so angry. I was throwing my face through. That's how I remember. It was a big window downstairs. But that was the only one. I mean, it was some gigs that hardly anybody was there, but that goes with the territory sometimes. A live rehearsal, as we call it, right?
Yeah.
So. But yeah, that was pretty much the worst one, getting the power shut off. You too loud. You ain't heard nothing yet, are you?
Yeah, I know the club. I've been there many times. My band played there a few times myself. It was a crazy place back then. I get it. But Joe, I'm going to let you go because I want to play some music. Okay. I got another guest coming up, but I'm going to reach out to you this week and put you in contact with my friend, and maybe you guys can work something out between all of you. And it would be great to see those songs re-released. So I'm happy. And it was a pleasure talking with you, Joe. Big fan of the band.
Same here, Mike.
And thanks for all the great music.
Thank you so much, and you're welcome. I hope to make some more.
I hope so too, buddy. You have a great night. Take care.
Okay. All
Bye-bye.
right, Mike. You too. Bye-bye.
All right, let's get on. You know what? Let's do some off the demo tape. Here's Penitentiary.
Days, without nights, without ways to take away your rights.
right, Black Virgin, Forbidden and Free, right before that, Penitentiary off the demo tape. I am definitely going to talk to Jeremy, hook him up with Joe, and it'd be great to see that re-released. All right, we're going to get to Steve in about 20 minutes or so. I spread the interviews out a little bit more so we have more time to talk now because all the guests are live. You never know how long an interview is going to go for. They're usually about a half hour, but you never know. All right, we mentioned Paul Quinn stepping down from Saxon on the live front because, he's just getting up there in age. He's getting older. But, one of the things I rant and rave about every week are bands being out there playing with no original members. I should say one original member. Violence is out on tour in Australia. They played a show with no original members. Not at all. Sean Killian, the singer, got sick, and they've had another singer come in to play with the other four guys who aren't original members of the band either. So, Violence played in Australia with no original members whatsoever on stage. And people paid money for that ticket. And actually, it looked like a pretty full house. I mean, maybe they didn't know until they got to the club that night that he wasn't going to be able to perform because he got sick, but even Queensryche, Tyler Torrey got sick last week. Even they canceled the shows. They didn't bring in a fill-in singer. And I know it's a different world we live in today, and a lot of money gets lost when shows are canceled and things are more expensive than ever. But when you're going to see a band play, you want to see the key members of that band up on stage. Okay, granted, Tyler Torrey is not a key member of Queen. I know he's a singer of the band. He's not an original member himself. You only have Michael, I think, in the band, and Eddie Jackson left these days. The rhythm guitar player and the bass player, but at least they were part of that original lineup. Even they canceled the show without Todd singing, so I don't get it. I mean, I know you're in Australia. It was a long way to go to do these shows, but you're not playing, so the fans aren't even seeing Violence. They're just seeing a cover band up there, and they're happy about it. What the hell is going on in this world today? I just don't get it. I'm baffled beyond human belief. I don't know. I don't know what to say about that. All right. And the other thing I wanted to talk about last week was, I don't really pay any attention or make much issue about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. A lot of people get so worked up that, the metal bands don't get in there and they get slighted upon. It's the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I mean, who gives a shit? Why does anybody even care about it or who they put in or don't put in there? I mean, they came out with the Metal Hall of Fame a few years back to kind of counter that. Now the Metal Hall of Fame is putting in bands like Foreigner. So they're doing the same thing as the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame did. Foreigner should be in there. I think they are in there. But I'm just saying, you don't put Foreigner in the Metal Hall of Fame. You know what I mean? That's where you put the bands that can't get into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. But they have Iron Maiden up for Iron Maiden was inducted this year, like they have been for the last few years. They're not going to get in. I think the last on the ballot for whatever it is, But what boggles my mind is that they have Dennis Stratton being nominated with the band into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. If they get in, he's one of the members. He did play in the first record, but he was only in the band for about a year, maybe a little over a year, if even that. And they kicked him out of the band because they didn't like the way he was trying to make the band go in the direction they wanted to go in. So he only played in the band for 1 year, and he did play in that first record, which is my favorite Iron Maiden record out of all of them. But then you have Blaze, who played with the band for 10 years or so? I don't remember how long he was in the band. Did 2 records with them, and he gets ignored. It sort of was the same thing with Judas Priest when they got in with Ripper, and I get that. Rob is the main guy, and he's going to make it happen. But look at Kiss. I mean, Kiss got nominated, and Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons speak out about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame all the time, which is one of the things I like that they say. And it's Eric Carr didn't get in there. And they're upset that the 2 guys in the band now, Tommy and Eric, aren't in there. And they've been with the band properly longer than Ace and Peter. I mean, Kiss, come on. I mean, Kiss is Ace and Peter, Gene and Paul to me. That's who Kiss is. But, Eric Carr was in the band for a very long time. He was a key member of that group. He was on all those big records from the 80s when they took the makeup off. He wasn't even nominated. How does he not get nominated, but Dennis Stratton gets nominated for Iron Maiden? Does that make any sense to you? None at all. This is why I'm saying you can't take this organization seriously for any way, shape, or form. But people do, and they get all worked up over, and I just don't know why. But I guess I do too right now, right? So who the hell knows? But let's get back to the music. How about a little Takashi with Kamikaze? The singer for this band, Danny Stanton. I'm sorry, my mouth is all dry. Danny Stanton is like a big shot in the music business. I think he was Twisted Sister's manager, and he runs a whole music promotion company that deals with a lot of bands. I tried to get him on the show years ago. He was just always too busy, and we couldn't do it, but I had a couple of the other guys from the show on when I think Heaven Help put that record out. So let's do Kamikaze.
Zero to
right, Tynator, Death Strike. Let's get Steve on the line. And before that, we did Tension, Reach for Your Sword. And before that, Vatican with the Power Lord.
Hello.
Steve, this is Mike calling for our interview. You're live on air. How are you, my friend?
Hey, I'm doing great. Congratulations on the retirement, Mike.
Oh,
I just
thank you
heard
very
that,
much.
About a week or so ago?
Yeah, it was
Yeah,
34
I did
years in
that
the making.
Oh, good for you. Yeah, I did that myself a few months back, and it's fantastic, isn't it?
I still feel like I'm on vacation yet, because it's still kind of new. But I guess as the weeks go on, I realize I'm never going back again.
Oh, good for you. Yeah, the last number of years, I truly live a blessed life. I had a lot of hard times when I was younger, so now it's just turned all around. The last couple decades, and just living the dream.
That's a fantastic thing, and it's amazing how things change over time, right?
Absolutely.
It's incredible. But I have to tell you, Steve, such a big fan of the band. I remember in 1987 having dozens of pen pals because there was no internet back then, and tape trading with people, and I got a copy of the Torture by Sound demo. I was like, holy cow. And, you didn't have any way of knowing who these bands were back then unless they were in a magazine or a fanzine. But that just blew me away. And years later, you find out, a bunch of kids in Arizona putting this together, and it was unbelievable stuff.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I tell you, when we were working on that demo, it took us a while to find the right guys to get together. When we were working on that demo, we wanted to put out a demo for about 6 months before we even started on this demo. And I said, no, there's a song I'm working on, and I got to get the song done. I just know this is going to be the lead song. And it wound up being Tonight is Tortured by Sound. And so I just had this feeling, and I really wasn't sure what the song was going to be yet. So it was just really cool the way that it turned out.
It turned out great for people that don't know. But think about 1986. I mean, by 1986, when the band is forming, the metal scene was already exploding. Metallica was about to bust open wide and take over everything at that time. Arizona, when you think about it, they had a great scene, and it really focused a lot on the fast and the thrash metal bands back. I mean, you had Rude Awakening, who kind of more punk in a way, but Inferno, you had the Dogs returning to Flotsam Jetsam, Soothsayer, Sacred Reich, Pariah. So many great bands in that area, but musically, how was it for a new band starting out? Did you feel there was enough of a scene in the Phoenix area for you to sustain yourself? Because back then, you had to kind of start out where you lived.
Yeah, most certainly. Well, so the scene was really coming together right about the time that we were coming together. And so there were bands that were, already out and doing their thing and doing great, like Flotsam and Jetsam and Sacred Reich. But, as things really started to solidify around there, all the bands you mentioned were playing a lot. All of us were really playing shows together, having a lot of good time. Now, everyone was trying to do their thing and find their way, and I respected that. And so it was just, it was a lot of fun, and the crowds in some of these shows they're pretty intense, I got to tell you.
I can imagine. Well, for people that don't know the history of the band, I mean, how did you guys come together? Were you all friends? Did somebody know each other? Did you meet by chance? How did it all happen that the band, met each other?
It was, well, the best way I could explain it is very hodgepodge. So our so Andre No and myself were the original members, and it turns out that he had jammed with Ryan, our drummer, maybe couple months before, and they just jammed a little bit here or there, and he kind of put it to the side. And him and I started jamming for a few months. And then after about 3 or 4 months, I forget roughly about that, we tried out a number of drummers, and then Ryan's name came up, and we went over there, and I just knew this guy was just phenomenal. And I tell you, he didn't think he was right for the band initially, and I just hounded him like a dog, and he wound up joining the band. Wow. And then Eric was someone who Andre jammed with, I think, in another band, maybe a year or so before. And he's like, we got to get this guy. But he's in L.A. doing great, playing with this band. And somehow he heard the music, or I forget how it all unfolded, but he moved back to Arizona from the LA scene to join the band. We're like, how does that happen? We'll take it.
Yeah. True. You talk about, all being so young, but Ryan really was young. Ryan was like in his mid-teens, maybe 15 or 16 at the time. He was really a young kid.
He was 15, and that
Wow.
was part of his. I think that was part of his hesitation. And such a great guy, and we were doing some stuff that was pretty cutting edge at the time. And so, I'm not really sure what all of his rationale was, because he really liked what we were doing and he was impressed and all that. I just didn't understand, what the holdup was. And so, he did this, he did these little stories about how he met each one of us, and posted them online. They were really cool. I really liked them, and even he was saying, that I just wouldn't take no for an answer. I'm like, gosh, was I that pushy?
Perseverance. But, you sort of have to be, don't you? I mean, you can be laid back and relaxed, but if you want to make things happen, you sort of have to be aggressive. I mean, there's like rough aggressive and then passive aggressive, but you have to be aggressive.
That's right. There's a right level of aggressive that you can hit, and then you just got to know when to stop. I guess you're right. That's true. And it's, as long as you're having fun and people around you having fun, and to be honest with you, to belabor that point with Ryan, is I remember when I was talking to him at the time on the phone to him, I'm like, I'm not stopping until he just tells me flat out, no, dude, I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I would have respected that, and I was waiting for him to say it, but he never did. He's like, all right. I'm like, okay, cool. So there you go.
And it all came together from there. And, the four of you were kind of meant to be together, I think, because there was definitely a chemistry in the band at that time. And I always feel like you guys were like that second wave of metal that came about in the mid to late 80s. And, the Torture by Sound demo really, to me, kind of defined the sound of the band and where it was going. I think that you took what was being done before you and added something new to it. And you guys were really onto something different at the time compared to what was happening around you and in the scene in general. I mean, it was kind of technical, it was advanced, and it was fast.
Well, thanks for noticing that. That was really what I was trying to be all about. Is I wasn't trying to be clever, something. It was really just about doing something a little different than everyone else was doing, because I love the stuff that a lot of other bands were doing. So why would I do that? Because they're already doing a fantastic job at that, right? And so one of the things that I made sure of is when I first started learning how to play guitar, I made sure that I never took a lesson, that I was self-taught the whole way through. And the whole point was to try to develop some original type of way of approaching the music.
True, yeah. But, like you're saying, trying to be different, that has to be the hardest thing, because if you try to do it intentionally, it can get kind of convoluted. When it comes naturally, it shows in the music. But how do you make that happen when, you have the old guard of Maiden, Priest, Motorhead doing that distinctive classic metal sound. Then you got the bands like Metallica at the time, who was still kind of thrashy back then, and Slayer and, Megadeth and those kind of bands out there. How do you take everything that you've heard before you and try to do something different where, it's a very hard thing to do, because the influences and the bands that are around you are always going to kind of creep into your music, but you have to make it something different. So how do you sit down and say, here's what I want to do, and here's the kind of style I want to come up with, and the genre that we want to play?
Well, I think at the heart of it, at least for me, was you just have to have such an incredible passion for what you're doing. And when you have that, and it gets you to play a real lot. And so when you're playing a real lot, then I started to just hear melodies and stuff in my head that were a little unique. And so it was really coming across it, just following, a natural path to, my passion for the music, and a culmination, to your point, of what I've heard before, but hearing something new in my head of a sound that I wanted to do. And that's kind of where it came from.
Well, being self-taught, I mean, was it more difficult for you to learn how to play that way? Did it come easy because you felt like you had no constrictions or boundaries based on, people teaching you how to do things?
Well, initially it's pretty slow, because, anyone who starts to play guitar, it's like you've got 5 thumbs on one hand and 5 thumbs on the other, right? And so it initially it was a little slow. And, I remember Ozzy Osbourne, Blizzard of Oz came out, and Randy Rhoads, I'm like, wow, this guy's just phenomenal. I mean, come on, right? And so I'm putting my finger on the record to slow it way down, even though the notes are distorted. But what I figured out is the relationship between how many notes apart each thing was, as I was starting to slowly figure it out. I had no idea what a hammer-on pull-off was. And so that's how I figured it out, is by slowing down a record with my finger on it.
That's incredible. When you hear somebody like Randy Rhoads, first time as you're learning how to play, does it discourage you as a guitar player, or does it encourage you to really work hard to get to that level?
Oh, it was really inspiring, because, it might sound a little dorky, but I just really tried to improve upon who I am and where I'm at. And it's not about where everyone's at or trying to be the best. It's just like trying to go as far with this as I possibly can, and really enjoy that journey.
True. Steve, the Torture by Sound demo comes out in '87. The band's kind of got a foothold now. People are going to start recognizing you. Where does the band go from here? I mean, is there an attempt to try to get signed to a label? Is the focus on getting out there and playing live and building up the band's presence on the scene, or is it going back into the studio or writing more music?
All of the above. Writing more music I was trying to do, but we were pretty busy doing all of the other stuff. And so, when the demo came out, it really caught fire, at least from our perspective. Is suddenly within about a month of sending out these demos to different places, we literally had over 100 magazines, fanzines writing about us, and the stuff they were writing about us was just crazy. And then fan mail from pretty much any country that I'd had ever heard of, and it was just really just very humbling that so many people were enjoying what we were doing. And so, one of the things I tried to do is really just not try to make it into anything but just what it was. I don't know if that really makes a lot of sense, but I was just trying to enjoy what we were doing at the time and just kind of follow whatever would happen. So we were deliberate, but then again, I was trying not to swim against the current, if that makes sense.
Oh, no, it completely makes sense. I understand that, absolutely. And it was 2 years later when the Living in Pain demo came out. I think that was the tape, to me, that kind of defined the band and the band's sound. I mean, how do you feel about that tape compared to the Torture by Sound?
I got to tell you, I'm a big fan of Torture by Sound just because it was, grassroots of us. And Living in Pain, I really enjoyed that CD. And that was really our band really pushing our musicianship. And so, we kind of made a choice of, we're not going to try to, be even metal commercial. Let's just push our musicianship and see what we're capable of pulling off. And so it was more about musicianship than it was really about, are the songs great or not great? And so that approach is, I really liked what we're doing, but I also knew that it might not quite have the appeal as the first demo, and that was okay.
Did you think it was a different sounding band by that time? I mean, it was only like a 2-year gap in between, if even that.
Well, that's true. In some ways, yeah. In some ways, yes, and in some ways, no. But if you look at even Torture by Sound, What Am I Doing? The song "What Am I Doing Here" as compared to Tonight is Torture by Sound. Even me, the guy who wrote most of the stuff on those demos, I could see the progression in my craft through the song. So I kind of I guess you could say that it sounded like a band that was maybe different. I don't know. I guess I'm really terrible at answering that.
No, you're not. That makes sense because like I said, when you talk to people about the band, they always living in pain, living in pain, living in pain. They always go to living in pain. I mean, I feel the same way. I mean, Torture by Sound was my introduction to the band, but I know as bands go along, they mature, they grow in the songwriting style, and the musicianship. Things are always going to change. I don't think it was that drastic, but I was always wondering how the band felt from one to the next, and you kind of explained it in perfect detail.
Oh, well, great. Thank you. I can tell you that the band, when we got together, just when we played together, there was just such a great chemistry. I mean, I really feel like, we were a very tight, close band, and, in terms of respect and trust and decision-making and all that sort of stuff.
I guess everybody was sort of on the same page from the beginning about the direction that the band was supposed to go in, because one of the biggest difficulties in any band is you always have that one member who says, we should try to go a little bit more commercial, or we should try to go in this direction, and then a lot of friction happens, and the original cause of the band kind of falls apart. Was everybody always on board with where the band had to go and what it had to do to accomplish their goals?
For the first 2 demos plus, I would say that we were definitely all on the same page. We would have conversations about a little bit left or a little bit right, but for the most part, when we made a decision, everyone was the type of guys who were like, hey, we're in this together and let's do it. And there wasn't really, At least I didn't really pick up any animosity from anybody. And to your point, I think everyone has their kind of things that they like and don't like. But I really just felt like we kind of all rolled with it pretty well together. It was more when grunge and started coming out and the music scene really just took a sharp left. That we said, okay, well, this is different.
Very different. I mean, were you willing to go along with that change in the scene, or was that kind of like the be-all to end-all for the band?
Well, for me, after the first demo, I said, you know what, I'm going to enjoy this and let whatever happens. And, if things turn out great, if not, then that's fine too. There was so many things that I wanted to do, with my life, that as much as I love music, it wasn't all about music for me. And so when, the music industry went it seemed like I've never seen such an abrupt change, at least, in my lifetime.
Yeah.
Or at least, from my teen adulthood, early adulthood. And so it really demanded some introspect on, okay, well, what do we do now? And so I think, I wrote stuff that was a little bit more crossover, relatively speaking, on a next demo that we actually never released. But and transitioning to that is, so we released a double LP last year on Back in Black Records, which pretty much has a lot of stuff that was never previously released, and the first two demos.
Yeah, the shrieking sounds of Definite Terror. I mean, a double LP, you don't get those much anymore these days. That was a real treat.
Yeah, that was. You know what? I thought, I was kind of surprised. I'll just put it to you that way. And then last week, I got the physical double LP album on red vinyl, and I've heard people say, "Oh, red vinyl is cool," and people are collecting it. It's kind of a thing now. And I'm like, "Oh, that sounds cool, great." And then I get this double LP, and I pull out one of the records, and I'm like, "Whoa, this is really cool."
It's got to be great, like, in a way, when you think about it, like 30, 40 years later, your band's on a vinyl record from a decade where we came from vinyl records. You have a vinyl record. It's a big deal now.
Right. I guess you just never know, right?
That's incredible.
That's kind of the irony, and not only after so many years being re-released, but re-released on vinyl. You got it.
Yeah, it's a cool thing. Going back to like the late 80s, you have the demo tapes out now. People know who the band is. The scene in Arizona is really starting to build up. Are you looking to shop the band around to labels? Was there any interest? Because, I mean, by 86, everybody and the mother was getting signed to a major label who had a little album out before then. The underground labels that got those bands started were now looking to sign all the local bands. So was there any interest from like maybe a Metal Blade or a Megaforce, who were like the two kind of premier underground labels at the time?
We went through a number of things, but nothing really panned out on the major label side of things. But we released, let's see here, we released on a few different indies. We released on North American Thrash Assault compilations, a few compilations, and I think that one was the most notable. And then we released a couple songs on Metal Blade Records, Metal Massacre. I think it might have been 16, something like that. So we did some stuff for a number of labels, but nothing where, hey, we're going to bring into the studio and we're going to do a brand new full thing, and we're going to promote the what out of it. So we never really quite got that far with things. But I think really, especially for myself and the guys, is that, there was so many different things that we wanted to do, that we were just kind of rolling with it and saying, let's just have fun with this stuff.
True. I mean, when the band did come to an end, and I guess probably sometime in the early 90s, I mean, did anybody stick with music at all? I mean, I know Eric was in, was it Benedictum a while back, but that was more recently than back in the 80s. I mean, did anybody go on to anything else after that, or did anybody just kind of like give up on music altogether?
Oh, no. So Ryan did some stuff, and he did the Ozfest tour with a band called Pump Jack, and I caught up with him in the San Francisco area, and he was having a great time. You could tell. You know how that is. It's a show every other night or every night.
Yeah.
And And then he did a show or two, I believe, overseas with another band. Eric did Benedictum for a while, and I think he did some pretty big size tours with a band called Pump Jack. Sorry, not Pump Jack.
He played with Jack Panzer for a little while too, I think.
Jack Panzer, thank you,
Yeah.
thank you. Yeah, and so yeah, some Jack Panzer stuff. And for me, I really wanted to test myself intellectually. So I go from this guy from, long hair, speed metal singer, lead guitar player, and I go and put myself and get a degree in electronics engineering, and was in high tech developing, a lot of stuff over the last 25 years until I retired. But during that time, I put out a full length CD where I played all the instruments. And the thing that was really my goal for that, it's a band called Skyline Boulevard. And it's the thing that I really wanted to make sure with this project is that when I played drums, it sounded like a real drummer. When I played bass, it was a real bass player, that it didn't sound like a guitar player doing everything. And so I think I did a pretty good job. It was a lot of fun to do it all by myself.
Wow, I mean, all those instruments. I mean, was that something that you picked up over the years, or stuff you were working on from very early on? Because, like I said, teaching yourself to play guitar, bass you could kind of pick up on. Now drums also. That's a lot of instruments to take under your belt.
Yeah, the piano, the bass, and all. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. And then in 2006, I produced over 50 bands in North America. And that was crazy fun. It was, and I produced pretty much any kind of music you could possibly think of. And there was one thing that was in common, and this was so cool, is every single band came to me and they want to try to dictate everything that I do. And I would take what they say and I would literally ignore every word they said and just produce the music the way that the music is telling me to produce. And I kid you not, every time, and this is what was so much fun, they'd get the track back, they'd explode, and they tell me, just do what you do, man.
That was great. Well, being a musician yourself, you know what it's like being on the other side of the coin when someone else is telling you how to do your music. It has to be a hard thing for anybody to tell a musician, well, it's a great song, but I think we got to do this to it and tinker with it. But sometimes you need that outside ear, because they hear things that you don't hear being so close to the music.
Right. Well, that was one. I mean, there were many motivations, but one of the motivations is, when we were first starting out, is finding someone that could produce the music we were doing was pretty hard to do. So we'd have an engineer come in and they wouldn't really understand, how to produce this stuff. And so we had to, kind of work at it. And so when I started, I spent a number of years teaching myself how to produce music, and finally getting to the level where, it was, pristine air quality, that was really exciting to me. And so that was near and dear to my heart. And so when people are coming to me, tell me all this stuff, I've been full circle to really empathize with where they're coming from, but not bothered trying to tell them, hey, just let your music do the talking, and let the tracks are going to tell me what they need. And that was really the fun part about it. If anyone ever came back and said, yeah, that's not quite right, and change this, I would have, but I had to first do my thing.
I completely get that. Steve, when Tynator comes to an end, I mean, is it a relief, or is it something that's hard to leave behind after putting so many years into it?
Well, it's a mixed bag, but, while we were in the band, I was enjoying it, but I was also looking forward to doing other things, including, the engineering. I did quite a lot in that. And then, I think in 2009, I was flying back and forth. At the time I was living in Southern Cal, and I was flying back and forth to Arizona, and we did a 3, 4, I forget how many benefit shows. Then so we got back together and we did some stuff, and that was a lot of fun. And as it turns out, right now, I'm in my studio right now and recording what may be another album.
That's what I was going to ask you. Is it because it's been a while since you guys sort of reunited, and if there's any new music on the horizon, so there is a possibility. Never say never, never say no, but we might have a new record soon.
Well, I'm taking forever, and I'm sure that, there's at least one band member who's like, come on, dude, really? You're taking forever? And I totally get it. That's just how we are. But so Ryan sent me, I think, 5 drum tracks last year, And so I'm started really working on those. And then we talked, I think last week, about a couple other songs. One song that we kind of messed around with but never did anything with back in the day, but he really liked it. I really like it. I wound up recording that because I wrote it on that Skyline Boulevard CD that I did myself. And so it turns out that he really likes two of the songs I did. So we haven't really talked too much about it yet. So this is all just kind of, mildly speculative, but he definitely wants to record them. What it would be, but I presume it would be part of these tracks, the other 5 tracks that he sent us.
That would be great. I mean, musically, you talk, 3 decades since the last stuff was recorded. So where do you go now? I mean, do you kind of pick up where you left off, or does everything that you've done over the last, 3 decades kind of showing the new music and the new sound?
Well, I think in a way, I think a lot of things have been culminating to what's happening right now. How hard I've worked to really understand how to produce the stuff the way that I think it needs to be produced, and the writing, and over time, hopefully, all of us who've worked hard in our craft, get a little bit more polished. And so I think that you hear this all the time, and it's totally cliche, but I truly mean this, and this will by far be the best stuff we've ever done.
I'm sure it will. Does it help that you're the singer, one of the main songwriters and the guitar player, that you have that consistency throughout your music because that you're doing, I don't want to say you're the only one writing music or the only key member of the band, but you are like, 2 of the 3 focal parts of the music.
It definitely has its advantages for writing. No, I've always just tried to just love what I'm doing in terms of playing my instrument and letting that kind of, I put little hooks together and this and that, and it just kind of leads me somewhere to where I like to just envision how a song will impact someone through, as the whole song progresses. How does it impact and keep someone's attention and entertain them? Because after all, if our music isn't entertaining, people that are listening in some way, shape, or form, then why are we doing what we're doing?
That's very true. When you think about it, when you look back now on to what you did back then, do you realize the impact that you had on the music scene and the people that were into the music? Or did you think people just said, we were a small band, we put a couple of tapes out, and people forgot about us? Did you realize how people remember this music and how it's lived on now since the 80s?
Well, hello.
Steve, it's Mike. I don't know what happened. Everything just went out. The power, everything just went down here. I don't know what happened. It must be something in the area.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm glad you got things. Sounds like you got things going again. Great.
Yeah, I don't know what happened. It was just the power company, I guess. I guess because I retired, because I work for the power company. I guess because I'm not there, there's nobody running it right no more.
There you go. That's totally it, I'm sure.
I apologize about that. But we were saying, I don't know where we left off. It was just, we're talking about, did you think people forgot about the band over the years and the legacy of the music you left behind?
Well, I checked out a few things online about 2000, and I would Google our band name, and there was over 300,000 hits coming up. I'm like, what the heck is that?
Wow.
It's crazy. And then so I started looking at some of the stuff, and I found a few interesting things. One, there was a book written by a novelist, and one of the cities was called Tynator. Now, Tynator's a made-up name. We're the bringers of tinnitus, so
Yeah.
that's what our name means. And so then there was a pretty big gamer who goes by Tynator, and then a number of things like that. And then I do a little bit more looking in I think one of our original tapes was going for this is in 2000, like $187 on eBay. And I'm like, what? how come I don't know about all this? And so at the time I felt like, well, cool, because we were really, we were really doing our thing really before there was any real presence on the internet. And so it was kind of cool to see it cross over. But then, I'm doing my thing, and years later, I'm like, right before the record company hit us up with re-releasing, I'm like, I'm sure, at this point, no one remembers who the heck we are, and that's cool. We had our fun, and we did our thing, and that's great. And then the record company hits us up, and at the time, it was a smaller label, and they wanted to re-release us, and then they got interest from a mid-sized label with Back in Black, and they said, hey, let us release that, and we'll do more with it. I guess I'm kind of third party, hearing this, so hopefully I got that kind of okay. And so I was like, what are you kidding me? This is ridiculous. I'm like, but I'll take it.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you did. And Steve, we're gonna wrap it up tonight because I see the thing starting to go again, and I don't want to lose you for a second time. So we'll wrap it up. We can say goodbye to each other. But such a big fan for all these decades. I hope that this new record comes together and comes out. And when it does, maybe the whole band will come back on the show and we'll do this all again.
That sounds great. Hey, Micah, thanks for having me on, and thanks for your listeners for listening, and congratulations again on your retirement. Good for you. You
too, my friend. Thank you very much. I'm sorry we lost each other. I'm going to send a very strongly worded letter to the electric company about this.
I'm sure you will.
As long as I get my pension check first, then I'll let them know. I appreciate it.
All right.
Take care, Steve. It was great talking to you. Bye-bye. All right. The thing is, the 1 week that I can keep the show running later because I don't have to go to work, we're having issues over here. I don't know if it's the neighborhood or if it's something on Spreaker's website. I have no idea. But let's get us some more Tynator music, and then we'll wrap things up here tonight. Pick up.
All the simple games, twisted mind on display.
Let's not begin. The folded waste and fever death. The people's laid inside. The book that's in your hands. It's robbed you of your time. Thousands of years sacrificed. To the lives of the losers and spies. Once it stops from every life. Will I find my evil ways to see to hell? See the decent pain by lost emotions divide. See the decent pain by.
Seed of Descent. All right, I want to thank Joe Cerna from Black Virgin for being on tonight and Steve Bashford from Tynator. I do appreciate it. Who do we have on next week? Next week we got Gene Hunter and Gary Ryan from New York Fury. Band's been around since the early 80s. They finally got their first debut record coming out, and it's a great one. Big band back in the day here in the New York City scene. And on top of that, they're back at it and active again. At least I think. We'll find out next week when we talk to the guys. Oh, and Claude Schnell from Dio will be on next week. Last week we have 2 live guests on. I think we only have one on the last of March, and then we'll. I think I'm supposed to be interviewing Vinnie Moore tomorrow from UFO, so maybe we'll get that on that week. We'll see. I also got Heidi Call from the Butcher Babies. I think next week I got interviews, so maybe we'll get that one on. All right, let's wrap it up here tonight with a little Anthrax, the good Anthrax, the Fistful of Metal Anthrax. Neil Turbin's going out to South America to celebrate the 40th anniversary of this record on his own. Hopefully he won't have to use a monitor like he did when he sang with Onslaught. But here you go, Soldiers of Metal. Take care, everybody. Have a great week. See you next Sunday night.